I had been sleeping for about 40 minutes, the profound, dreamless sleep that comes only after an exhausting week. Then my phone suddenly illuminated the nightstand like a signal flare. I am 63 years old. I devoted 31 years to working as a family lawyer. My body still reacts instinctively to surprise calls the same way veterans tense up at sudden loud noises. Nothing positive ever arrives via phone at 2 a.m. Never. The name appearing on the screen caused my heart to skip precisely one beat. Skyla. Not Anthony. Not his wife, Natalie. My granddaughter, 8 years old, phoning me from what I believed was her own bed inside their home in Marietta, Georgia, a peaceful suburb outside Atlanta, where the grass is overly manicured and the expressions are overly polished and everything appears normal until you examine it more closely. I picked up before the second ring. "Skyla, sweetheart, what's the matter?" The noise she produced wasn't exactly weeping. Not quite. It was the kind of sound a child makes after crying for so long that the tears have dried up. Just ragged breathing, trembling inhalations, like an engine struggling to start. "Grandpa." She said my name as if it were the final word she possessed. I was already upright, already grabbing my glasses, already computing. Old routine. 31 years in family law trains you to run calculations in your mind before your feet touch the ground. Distance. 6 hours driving, 45 minutes flying. Time wasn't on my side, yet I was doing it regardless. "I'm here," I told her. "I'm right here. Tell me what occurred." They left. 2 words. I had her repeat them because I truly could not accept what I heard. "Who left, darling?" "Daddy and Mama and Alex." Her voice broke on the final name, her brother's name. Her biological brother, Anthony, and Natalie's biological son, 11 years old, who shared their features and their joy and evidently their travel arrangements. They went to Florida, to Disney World. I remained silent for a moment. "Say that again." "They went to Disney World," she repeated more quietly, as if she felt guilty about it, as if it were somehow her fault for not being included. "They said I had school on Monday, and it didn't make sense to bring me. But Alex doesn't have school either. And Grandpa," she shattered. Just shattered. "Why? Why didn't they take me along? Here is what I need you to grasp about that instant. I am a man who once questioned a sitting county judge without hesitation. I once presented arguments before an appellate court while running a 102-degree fever because my client depended on me. I have delivered messages to parents that no parent ought to hear. Custody lost, rights ended, children taken away, and I have done it with calm hands and a controlled tone because that is what the profession demanded. I sat on the edge of my bed in Decatur, Georgia, 6 hours from my granddaughter, and I had to press my fist to my mouth to stop myself from voicing every single thought racing through my head. "You did nothing wrong," I said instead. "Do you hear me?" "Not a single thing." "Then why?" "I don't know yet, sweetheart, but I'm going to discover the reason. I didn't realize it then, but I'm going to discover the reason would turn into the most significant commitment I'd make in the past 10 years of my life." I phoned my neighbor Joseph Wright at 2:11 a.m. Joseph is 71, a retired Delta mechanic, and the only individual I know who handles a late-night call as if it were an ordinary chat. "Stephen," he answered on the first ring, sounding fully alert. "I have never figured out how he does that. I need you to look after the dog." Silence. "Then for how long?" "I don't know. A few days, possibly longer." "That granddaughter of yours?" I hesitated. "Yeah, I'll come by in 10 minutes for the key. That's Joseph for you." He never asked a single question I wasn't prepared to address. I've known him for 22 years, and that man has never once interfered in my affairs, except on every occasion when it truly counted. Those are the kind of friends you hold on to. I reserved a flight on my phone while still wearing my pajamas. 6:15 a.m. departing from Hartsfield-Jackson, arriving in Atlanta at 7:02 a.m. Yes, I realize it's hardly a flight. It's basically an overpriced shuttle with snacks. But I wasn't about to drive 6 hours at 2 a.m. I am 63, not 30. My back settled that matter long ago. Then I did something I hadn't attempted in ages. I went into my home office, opened the bottom left drawer of my desk, and retrieved a small digital recorder, the type I used to bring to every client session before everything shifted to applications and online storage. Compact, discreet, about the size of a lighter. I convinced myself it was merely routine. Old attorney reflex. I would determine later if that was genuinely accurate. I arrived in Atlanta at 7:08 a.m. on a Thursday, 3 minutes behind schedule because the pilot faced unexpected headwinds, which is airline terminology for we aren't entirely sure either. I carried a small suitcase, my briefcase, my recorder tucked in my shirt pocket, and 31 years of family law weighing heavily in my chest like a rock. I rented a car at the Hertz counter, a blue Chevy Malibu that reeked strongly of pine air freshener, the sort that makes you question what odor it's masking, and drove 22 minutes to Marietta. The house on Whitmore Drive appeared precisely as I recalled. Beige exterior, 2-car garage, flower beds that Natalie tended with the dedication of someone whose confidence relied on HOA standards, which honestly, it possibly did. Skyla must have been observing from the window because the front door swung open before I climbed the porch steps. She was wearing her pajamas, pink ones decorated with little cartoon sloths. Her hair, dark and curly, the type that requires care and patience, and 45 minutes with a quality detangler, was messy from sleep. Her eyes were puffy. She had been weeping since well before she contacted me. She said nothing. She simply ran. I caught her at the base of the steps and held tight. She threw her arms around my neck with the strength of someone desperate to confirm I was actually there. I sensed her release a breath against my shoulder, this extended, trembling exhale as if she had been containing it for hours. Perhaps she had. "I've got you," I said. "Grandpa's got you." We remained like that on the front path for some time. The neighborhood was still. A sprinkler was operating 2 houses away. A man walking a beagle offered us a courteous nod as he went by. The manner in which suburban residents greet one another. "I notice you. I honor your space. Continue on." Eventually, I drew back and studied her face. "Have you had anything to eat?" She shook her head. "Did you sleep at all?" She didn't sound convincing. "Okay." I lifted my bag with one hand and took her hand with the other. "Let's head inside. You're going to show me around and I'm going to prepare you the worst scrambled eggs you've ever tasted because you know I'm no chef." She nearly smiled. Nearly. The house revealed details before Skyla uttered a single word. That's another long-standing lawyer practice. Assess the surroundings before you assess the individuals. The living room featured family pictures lined along the hallway wall, the sort of arranged display that declares, "See how joyful we are." I moved slowly. I observed attentively. Alex's school picture. From last year's class. Wide smile. Anthony's nose. Anthony and Natalie at what appeared to be the Grand Canyon. Alex positioned between them, all three smiling broadly. Alex's Little League trophy resting on the hallway shelf. Alex's finger painting actually framed, on the wall next to the bathroom. I counted 11 pictures in that hallway. Want to guess how many included Skyla? 2. One was her first day of school photo, positioned slightly off to the side, as if added as an afterthought. The other was a group image, a Christmas picture, where she stood at the far left margin of the frame, half a step behind the others, as if she had stepped into somebody else's family snapshot. I stood there examining that Christmas picture for longer than necessary. Skyla approached beside me and gazed at it as well. "I don't like that one," she said softly. "Why not?" She shrugged. "I look like I'm just visiting. 8 years old. 8 years old." And she already comprehended what I was only starting to record. I reached up and touched the recorder in my shirt pocket. Over eggs that were, as promised, truly awful. Skyla spoke. I allowed her to guide. Another old routine. Don't question a witness. Simply open a door and step aside. When did they inform you about the trip? I inquired. Tuesday evening after supper. She moved her eggs around the plate. Daddy mentioned it was a sudden outing for Alex's birthday. Alex's birthday isn't until… I caught myself. I knew precisely when Alex's birthday fell. It was 2 months away. I know, Skyla said, eyes downcast. I didn't mention it, though. Why not? Because when I brought up the camping trip earlier, Mama became upset and accused me of being selfish. And then Daddy stopped speaking to me for 3 days. There it was. I maintained a neutral expression, lawyer's expression, the one I honed for 3 decades so that juries couldn't decipher me. What camping trip? In September, they brought Alex camping in Tennessee. They claimed I had a sleepover that weekend, but I didn't. Arya canceled. She stated it plainly, as though it were merely a fact, as though the pain had been revisited so often that it had become smooth. So, I remained home with Mrs. Patterson next door. Arya Rodriguez, Skyla's closest friend from school. I noted that mentally. I didn't realize it then, but September would turn into Exhibit A. Skyla. I placed my fork down. Has this occurred previously? Them traveling somewhere without you more than once. She regarded me for an extended moment, long enough that I realized she was weighing something, weighing whether to confide the complete burden of it. Then she nodded gradually, cautiously, as if the admission itself carried a cost. How many times, darling? She stared at the ceiling, tallying. My stomach sank with every second of quiet. Many times, she eventually replied. Grandpa, many times. I extended my hand across the table and covered hers. I activated the recorder. I didn't know it then, but the eggs represented the final ordinary moment we would experience for quite some time. Anthony phoned at noon. I allowed it to reach voicemail. He rang again at 12:43. Then Natalie attempted at 1:15. At 1:47, Anthony left a message that I would later present in a courtroom. If you've followed along this far, please do us one small favor. Subscribe. Many viewers watch without ever subscribing, but it requires nothing from you and signifies a great deal to us. Thank you sincerely. Anthony Hall. My son, my own flesh and blood. The boy I coached through Little League and transported to SAT preparation, and covered 2 semesters of college costs for until he determined what he truly wanted to pursue. Called my phone 4 times between noon and 1:47 p.m. on that Thursday. 4 times. Not once did he begin with, "Is Skyla all right?" I want you to reflect on that. I replayed all 4 voicemails while Skyla slept on the sofa. Finally, thankfully asleep beneath the weighted blanket I had discovered in the hall closet, the one she had evidently pulled out herself at some point during the night. I sat at Anthony's kitchen table with my legal pad, my recorder, and a cup of coffee that was struggling to keep me alert. And I listened. Message 1, 12:02 p.m. Hey, Dad, it's me. I'm guessing Skyla reached out to you. I thought she might. Look, it's more involved than it probably appears at the moment. Okay, just return my call. More involved, right? Like advanced calculus is involved. As though abandoning an 8-year-old by herself while you brought her brother to Disney World represented some sort of subtle ethical stance needing explanation. Message 2, 12:43 p.m. Dad, please, call me back. I know you're there. No, son, I am here. There's a distinction. Message 3, 1:15 p.m. This one came from Natalie. I want you to understand that Skyla was entirely secure. Mrs. Patterson next door was aware to look in on her, and we left her meals and she had her tablet. And she left an 8-year-old with a neighboring adult on alert, like a houseplant, like something you tend to sporadically and hope survives. I noted, no emergency contact specified, child left without a legal guardian on site. 31 years of family law, folks. It returns swiftly. Message 4, 1:47 p.m. Anthony once more. And this one differed. This one carried Florida ambient sounds in the background, music, crowd murmurs, the unmistakable noise of an amusement park, a location built to create happiness. My son was phoning me from inside the Magic Kingdom to justify why his daughter wasn't present with him. Look, Dad, I need you to avoid turning this into a major issue. Skyla's okay. You being there is actually... It's helpful. She adores you. This arrangement benefits everybody. We'll return Sunday. We can discuss everything then. Just keep her steady, all right? She tends to overreact. I placed the phone down very deliberately on the table. She tends to overreact. She's 8 years old and she contacted her grandfather at 2 a.m. because the individuals who were meant to select her decided against it. And the term he chose was overreact. I picked up my legal pad and wrote 3 words underlined twice. Pattern Documentation Court. Skyla awoke around 3:30, hair disheveled, sloth pajamas wrinkled, appearing roughly 7 years old, and somehow also about 40. Children who have endured difficulties develop that expression. Mature eyes in a youthful face. I had witnessed it in courtrooms more often than I could tally. "You remained," she said, as if she had partly anticipated me leaving. "I told you I would." She sat upright and drew her knees to her chest. "Did Daddy phone?" "He did. Is he upset?" Oh, the boldness of that inquiry. "Is he upset?" "No, I said he's not upset." "How are you feeling?" "Hungry." Then more softly and somewhat ashamed about the fact that I contacted you. That I wept. She tugged at a loose thread on the blanket. "Mama claims I'm overly emotional." I turned my legal pad face down on the table. "Skyla, look at me." She did. Reaching out to someone who cares about you when you're frightened and isolated is not overly emotional. That is precisely what you're meant to do. That is the entire reason for having a grandpa. I paused. And just so you know, I wept in a courtroom once, actual tears before a judge. Her eyes widened. "You did?" The judge was unimpressed, but the jury was moved. I rose. "Come on, get changed. We're not remaining inside this house the entire day." "Where are we headed?" Fair question. I hadn't completely decided, but I knew we weren't staying within 4 walls filled with uneven photo displays and the memory of every journey she had been excluded from. "We're going to have lunch. Proper food, not my eggs." "Thank goodness," she said. I laughed aloud. First time since I had arrived. We settled on a spot called Rosie's Diner on Canton Street in downtown Marietta, the type of establishment that has existed since before the interstate was constructed and declines to modernize its style or its offerings on principle. Vinyl seating, plastic-covered menus, a pie case with genuinely spinning pies within it. Skyla requested a grilled cheese and a chocolate milkshake with the assurance of someone who deserved it. And I requested the meatloaf because I am 63 years old and I have accepted who I am. Our server, her name tag read Donna, which suited a woman in a diner of this nature perfectly, delivered our beverages and offered Skyla a smile the way grown-ups do when they sense a child has faced challenges lately. "You have a solid grandpa?" Donna asked her. Skyla glanced at me. "Yeah," she said. "He's all right." "High praise," I remarked. Donna winked and departed. During lunch, I did what I had deliberately avoided all morning. I posed questions gradually, kindly, presented as casual talk, not questioning. But I would be dishonest if I claimed the attorney inside me wasn't conducting a subtle deposition beneath every mouthful of meatloaf. "Tell me about your school performance," I said. "The one in December. Your instructor sent me the program. You had a speaking role." Skyla's expression shifted in a complex way. "You saw that?" "Ms. Peterson forwarded me a copy. Said you performed beautifully." "I had 7 lines," she said with subdued satisfaction of someone who had committed that count to memory. I was the narrator. Were Anthony and Natalie present? The complex expression returned to her face. Daddy attended for a short while, she said cautiously. He had to depart early because Alex had hockey training. And Natalie. She remained with Alex. I nodded gradually, maintained an even tone. What about your birthday? March, correct? You just became 8 in March. We had cake, she stated it plainly. At home. Just the family. Daddy gave me a tablet. She hesitated. I overheard them conversing the evening prior. Mama suggested they organize a party, but Daddy said she halted. You can share it. She gazed at her milkshake. Daddy mentioned they had hosted Alex's large birthday at Great Wolf Lodge the previous year, and they couldn't arrange large birthdays annually. It's too costly. She delivered the final part in a slightly altered tone, the precise imitating tone children employ when repeating adults without noticing. So we simply had cake. Alex's birthday falls in October. Skyla's is in March. That's 5 months apart. 2 separate years, 2 separate budgets, 2 separate levels of celebration. And somehow the costly objection had fallen completely on the adopted child's portion of the account. I recorded nothing. I didn't need to. Certain details simply etched themselves permanently into recollection. Skyla, I set my fork aside. May I ask you something? And I need you to be truthful, even if you believe it could cause someone difficulty. Do you sense that in this home, you and Alex receive equal treatment? Extended pause. Donna replenished my coffee unprompted. The pie case turned. A pair in the booth behind us debated softly about ordering dessert. Sometimes, Skyla replied. Then more candidly, not truly. Can you describe one additional instance that occurred? Something distinct from what you've already shared. She considered it thoughtfully. That mature expression once more, evaluating which truth to entrust to me. Family pictures, she eventually said. At Christmas, we visited that location at the mall, the one with the background and the coordinated clothing. She checked to confirm I understood. Mama selected red sweaters for herself and Daddy and Alex. She neglected to acquire one for me. She paused. She claimed she had placed an order, but it didn't arrive promptly. So, what occurred in the pictures? I wore my school sweater, the blue one. Her voice remained deliberate, controlled, as if she had recounted this tale repeatedly and smoothed out the rough parts. It's fine, though, Arya mentioned. I looked the nicest anyway because I stood out. Loyal friend, the type of friend who discovers the positive aspect. Where are those pictures? I inquired. Were they printed? They're displayed on the wall in the living room. I recalled the gallery wall. 11 pictures. Skyla in 2. I recalled that Christmas image. Her at the margin of the frame. Blue sweater, half a step behind. Exhibit B. We returned to the house around 5 I had paused at a CVS and permitted Skyla to select anything she desired. Nail polish, gummy bears, one of those small puzzle books with word searches and labyrinths. And she had chosen with the cautious moderation of a child who had learned not to request excessively. That chipped away at something inside me somewhat. That cautious moderation. While she arranged herself at the kitchen table with her word search and her gummy bears, I proceeded to the hallway. I stood before that gallery wall for an extended period. Then I retrieved my phone and captured images of every single picture, every frame, every label, every deliberate setup. I counted once more, 11 photos. I recorded who appeared in each. Then I activated my recorder and spoke softly, just above a whisper. Thursday, roughly 5:15 p.m. Whitmore Drive, Marietta, Georgia. Subject, family photo documentation in the hall residence. 11 photographs exhibited in main hallway. Child Skyla features in 2. In 1, she is visually distanced from the family group. In the second, she is dressed differently from the rest of the family, indicating she was not initially part of the planning for the photographic session. both images situated in less prominent viewing spots compared to the other photographs. I stopped the recording, returned to the kitchen, sat opposite Skyla, who was concentrating intensely on her word search. "Grandpa," she said, without raising her eyes, "is parallel spelled with 2 L's or 1? She circled it victoriously. "Then, are you going to force me to return when they arrive home Sunday?" I regarded her. She posed it so matter-of-factly, as if she already anticipated the response could be affirmative, as if she had constructed an entire emotional framework around expecting the answer to be yes. "I don't know yet," I replied truthfully. "But I want you to understand one thing." She looked up. "No matter what occurs, no matter what I determine, no matter what any grown-up in your life determines, I want you to know that you are not an afterthought. You are not a burden. You are not a blue sweater in somebody else's Christmas picture." I kept my tone steady. Lawyer steady. "You are the central reason, Skyla. Do you understand me?" She gazed at me for an extended moment. Then her chin trembled just once. She controlled it. "Okay," she said gently. "Okay," I responded. She returned to her word search. I returned to my legal pad. I didn't realize it then, but Sunday wasn't going to unfold at all like Anthony had anticipated. He phoned again at 7:52 p.m. This time, I picked up. "Dad?" The relief in his tone was instant. Then, warily, "How is she?" "She's fine. She's here. She's safe." I paused. "No thanks to anyone currently in Orlando." Silence. "Dad, Anthony." I stated his name the way I once did in courtrooms when I required someone to realize they were no longer engaged in informal talk. "I'm going to pose a question, and I need you to respond truthfully." "Okay. When was the last time Skyla joined a family vacation?" Extended pause. Longer than appropriate. The duration of that pause revealed everything. "We brought her to—" He halted, began once more. "Last summer we went to—" Another pause. "It's been a challenging year money-wise, Dad. You don't grasp the camping trip. I mentioned September, Tennessee." Alex went. Silence. "The Christmas pictures. I mentioned she wore a blue sweater." Further silence. "Her birthday was cake at home." I mentioned Alex's was Great Wolf Lodge." Total silence now. The kind that carries substance. Anthony. I maintained an even voice. Controlled like a scalpel, not a hammer. "I'm not labeling you a bad person at this moment. I'm requesting that you tell me truthfully. When you consider what I just outlined, what do you observe?" He stayed quiet for a considerable time. When he eventually replied, his voice had changed, softer. Something beneath it that I identified because I had heard it in courtrooms from individuals who had finally exhausted their options. "I don't know how it reached this point," he said. And there it was. Not a justification, not a rationalization, just a man confronting his own image and unable to account for the individual staring back. I drew a slow breath. "We'll speak Sunday," I said. "All of us face to face." "Okay," he said softly. "Okay, Dad." I ended the call. I sat in the kitchen of his house at his table, sipping his coffee. I opened my laptop and started preparing the petition. If you've been following for some time and wish for stories like this to continue, it genuinely assists if you tap that like button and subscribe. 97% of people never bother, but it's what sustains this entire operation. So, thank you, truly. Anthony and Natalie entered through the front door at 4:17 p.m., wearing Mickey Mouse ears and tanned shoulders, and the delicate smiles of individuals who had spent 4 days acting as though everything was normal. Skyla was seated at the kitchen table, working on her word search. She didn't glance up. That affected him more deeply than anything I could have uttered. I observed it register on his face like a strike. "Hey, sweetheart," Anthony began. "She can hear you," I said from the entrance. "Whether she replies is up to her." Natalie's gaze shifted toward me. "Stephen, We ought to discuss this in private. We ought to, I concurred. But first, Anthony, examine your mailbox. He frowned, walked to the door, returned clutching a manila envelope. The type with a small metal fastener that signals this is formal and you ought to be seated. What is this? That, I said, is a petition for de facto custodianship of Skyla Hall, submitted Friday morning in Cobb County Superior Court. I allowed that to settle for precisely 2 seconds. I've been productive. Natalie's face paled. You can't. I did. 31 years of family law, dear. I didn't forget a thing. Anthony remained completely motionless. He opened the envelope gradually. The way people open items they already sense will alter their existence. His eyes scanned the initial page. Then he lowered himself. Simply sat down right there in the hallway. I didn't experience victory. I experienced fatigue and conviction. Which is preferable, Dad? His voice sounded empty. I have recordings, I said softly. I have photographs. I have dates, Anthony. Every journey, every birthday, every school performance with vacant seats where 2 parents ought to have been present. I have a pattern so evident that I could submit it to any judge in Georgia and succeed before noon. Natalie began to weep. I offered her a tissue because I'm not heartless. I'm not pursuing this to ruin you, I said. I'm pursuing this because that young girl inquired why. At 2 a.m., and no one in this household provided a satisfactory response. Anthony raised his eyes. His eyes were bloodshot. I know, he said, almost inaudibly. I know, Dad. Are you going to contest it? Extended silence. The most extended silence of my life, perhaps, longer than any decision I had ever awaited. He shook his head. There it was. The hearing occurred 14 days afterward. Cobb County Superior Court. Judge Patricia Wynn presiding, a woman who possessed roughly 0 patience for foolishness and sharp intuition regarding children. Anthony appeared without legal representation. He testified for 11 minutes, stating calmly and without exaggeration that he cared for his daughter, but that he had let her down in manners he was still attempting to comprehend, and that his father could offer her something he evidently had not: reliability, importance, a prominent position. Judge Wynn awarded de facto custody to me, Stephen Collins, effective right away. I glanced over at Skyla seated beside my attorney, Josephine Carter, in her nicest purple dress. She was already watching me. She didn't weep. She simply nodded. That same small, solemn nod, as if we had struck an agreement and she was acknowledging it, as if she at last trusted it. On the drive home, she stayed silent for some time. Then, Grandpa, am I your first choice? I kept my focus on the road, Marietta passing by the windows, ordinary and glowing in the late afternoon light. You're my only choice, I said. Always have been. She placed her hand over mine on the gear shift. That was sufficient. That was everything. Thanks for watching my video, PLZ. Like and subscribe my channel.